a racist note will face a judge today.
Only Channel 9 obtained exclusive surveillance video of the store being damaged. Eyewitness News reporter Gina Esposito is live at the store with details. Gina?
Yeah, Curtis Flournoy is accused of targeting the Central Market here off Albemarle Road. Take a look here behind me. We can still see a lot of the damage, the burn marks here, the broken glass here, the front door of the business 5 days after the attack. Now take a look at this surveillance video from Thursday night here. You can see the person throw a rock through the front door, then come back and throw something on fire through the window. A note was left behind. It said, "We need to get rid of all the Muslims, Indians, and immigrants, and if you don't follow this warning, we are not responsible for the torture starting now." Police say information led them to arrest Flournoy on Sunday. The store's owner told us he's glad for the arrest, but still worries about his safety. Now, Flournoy is facing a handful of charges, including ethnic intimidation and for the burning that happened here at this building. He's set to be in court this afternoon. Here live in East Charlotte, Gina Esposito, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
A parishioner at a historically black church, spray-painted with the words "Vote Trump," has been accused of setting it on fire. Andrew McClinton is accused for arson against the Hopewell Missionary Baptist Church on November 1st, shortly before the election of Donald Trump. Authorities originally investigated the arson as a hate crime against the church, which has been holding services for 111 years in Greenville, which has majority black residents. Attacks against black churches were used as a terror tactic by the Ku Klux Klan during the Civil Rights Movement. However, the Mississippi Department of Public Safety said that 45-year-old McClinton, who is black, is one of around 200 members of the Hopewell congregation. Authorities do not believe it was politically motivated.
I feel sad that he feels the need to do that.
A range of emotions.
I just thought it seemed a little odd.
Neighbors of Grand Central Station, scene of what was believed to be a heinous attack in April, learning that it was a lie.
I was really saddened to think that something like that could happen. My own daughter is gay, and to hear that it didn't is such a relief to me.
And I felt someone grab the back of my head and slam it into the wall.
Rick Jones had claimed he was beaten and threatened with his life while working here in April. A gay slur was carved into his arm while he was unconscious, he said. The restaurant was subsequently burglarized and vandalized. Graffiti was riddled with threats and slurs.
It is very concerning.
The sheriff says the alleged crimes resulted in a broad investigation, which did its job.
I think this has shown that we've got a capable agency to investigate and to bring to fruition good things.
But why did Jones do it?
This is a cry for help from a troubled young man, a 21-year-old gay man living in a very conservative family in a very conservative area.
Attorney Brett Tolman says money raised online to help his client is being refunded.
As it turns out, someone does need help, but that's Rick in a way that may not have been anticipated.
More fake hate in the news today. Yes, a student claimed a racial assault, and then police made a game-changing announcement. According to the Conservative Tribune, they report that in Bowling Green, Ohio, reports have surfaced of accusations of an assault made by a Bowling Green State University student that actually turned out to be false. They state here that Alicia Long claimed she was assaulted and called a racial slur on November 9th, the day after President-elect Donald Trump's victory. They stated in her police complaint, Long reportedly wrote that she was walking down Crim Street to ask for yard signs when 3 boys began to throw rocks at me. She continued her claim in her complaint that the white males responsible shouted profanities at her while wearing Trump t-shirts. Long posted what happened to her on her Facebook page, but curiously, she never called 911. Then the Bowling Green detectives stated that her post got a lot of attention, and when Bowling Green State University officers took Long to the police station to give her statement, they noticed something. They write, reportedly, her story changed multiple times throughout the investigation. According to Lieutenant Dan Mancuso of the Bowling Green Police, he said, quote, several times the complainant changed her story about what happened, where it happened, and when it happened. So, in an effort to get to the truth, Mancuso obtained a search warrant for her Facebook and Verizon history. It turns out that Long was not where she said she was during the time of the alleged incident. They say based on that information, it proved that she was not in the location when she said it occurred. Mancuso told WTVG. They write, after it was revealed that she lied about the assault, she was charged with falsification and obstructing official business. They state she was also issued a citation and will have a future court date.
A Jewish teenager believed responsible for many recent threats has been arrested today in Israel.
And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo tweeted that he hopes the arrest now brings comfort to those affected by the rash of hate crimes. Eyewitness News reporter Diana Rocco is live now in Manhattan, where Jewish leaders are responding as well. Diana.
Lori and Liz, many here breathing a sigh of relief this noon after a multi-agency international investigation. It was a cyber unit that tracked down this 19-year-old and his father. They are now charged with making more than 100 threats on Jewish community centers and schools. Now in custody, a 19-year-old with dual citizenship in Israel and the U.S. Police say he has been responsible for terrorizing Jewish community centers across the United States and here in New York since the beginning of the year.
We don't know for sure that he's responsible for all the calls that were made and all the emails that were sent. So we have to suppose that maybe, just maybe, there are still one or more criminals responsible for these kinds of acts.
Since January, dozens of threats have been called in to JCCs in as many as 12 states in one day, at least 6 here in New York, including Staten Island, Queens, Tarrytown, and in New Jersey. In February, the threats forced evacuation of this JCC in Staten Island for several hours while police and other law enforcement swept the building, later determining it was safe to re-enter. After an international investigation, Israeli police now say the calls came from a teenager in South Israel who could not enter the army because he was deemed mentally insufficient. He and his father, who was also arrested, may have phoned in more than 100 bomb threats in schools and community centers in the U.S., Israel, and New Zealand.
We can be very optimistic that we have, both in my country and your country, law enforcement agencies that are dedicated, that they do not rest until they catch the culprits.
Your guilty plea. Yes. All right. In terms of what's alleged to have happened then, back on November 15th of 2016, were you at 600 East Liberty Street in the city of Ann Arbor? Yes. What did you do there that makes you think you're guilty of this crime?
I was suffering from depression, and I made a superficial scratch on my face. It was visible, and I was embarrassed by what I'd done. So I made up a story and told a friend that a stranger had done it while I was walking. I was encouraged to report to the police, and I made the mistake of doing that.
Okay. And what did you tell the police?
I told the police that I was scratched by a strange man.
Okay. All right. All right, and based on that, I do find a valid factual basis for the plea. I find the plea knowingly, voluntarily, and understandingly made. I'll accept it, and counsel, do you believe I comply with the court rule?
Yes, Judge.
All right. And no objection to the prosecutor.
A Muslim woman is charged with lying to police about a hate crime, but her sister is blaming the NYPD. That is Sarah Saweed. Coming to the defense of her younger sister, Yasmin, she says the NYPD shouldn't have questioned claims Yasmin made about being harassed by Trump supporters on the subway. The police investigation revealing that that crime never actually happened. Yasmin says she made up the whole story to avoid getting in trouble with her parents for staying out late with friends.
Wow.
Well, I'm here on Smith Street. This is where this incident supposedly took place. This is close to St. Mary Boulevard and Johnston Street. Now, this student claims Trump supporters attacked her and robbed her of her wallet and her hijab. Now, the police have conducted an investigation. It turns out this entire story was made up. Students here on campus say it's unfortunate that incidents like this are being spread around with the campus's name on it. It is blown up on social media. It has 6,000 shares on Facebook. The New York Times, Washington
Washington Post, Huffington Post, and several other news stations have shared this story as well. And it turns out that this story is made up, and students here feel it's just adding to the negativity that's happening around the nation right now following this election. Now, I spoke with one student, Robin Gonzalez. She says enough is enough. It is time to stop all the hate.
So I think it's very important for the campus to go ahead and promote positivity and hope for the future.
We have breaking news just in on a story that we brought to you earlier tonight. We told you about a 20-year-old Louisiana woman who claimed to have been attacked and set on fire by 3 men. Police just announced that the story was fabricated and that the burns were self-inflicted. Sharmika Moffitt told police that she was walking through a park when she was attacked. She said that a group of 3 men wrote the initials KKK and a racial slur on the hood of her car. Greg Hilburn from the News Star has been following this story from the beginning, and he joins us now by phone with the latest. Greg, first, what else do we know about what police are now saying is a fabricated story?
Well, Ryan, as you said, I followed the story all day yesterday in Winnsboro, which is a small town in rural northeastern Louisiana. It was very disturbing and unsettling to the community for obvious reasons. By this morning, through sources, I had begun to determine that something appeared not quite right about the story, about the victim's story.
What struck you as not quite right? Greg, I'm going to jump in. What struck you as not quite right?
Well, my sources within law enforcement began telling me that they were to not make sure that we didn't jump to conclusions in a way that normally you wouldn't, and that the DNA evidence might show something very different. And by noon, or 1 to 2 o'clock, I had confirmed that the police were going to announce at a news conference this afternoon, which is still ongoing, that they believe that Sharmika Moffitt fabricated the story, and her motives are still unclear.
Okay, the motives are unclear. And Greg, I just want to mention, we just got this information in as well, that police revealed that it was a self-inflicted cigarette lighter and a charcoal starter was recovered with her fingerprints on the bottle, and that evidence was confirmed by a state police crime lab. So that's probably the evidence that told them that it was a fabrication. Now, talk to me about her, because we showed the pictures with her with a little girl. So I'm wondering if she has a history of medical issues, if that little girl is her daughter, and now is that child safe at this point? Tell us what we know about her.
Well, we know that she, for about a month, had been a temporary worker at a sweet potato processing plant owned by ConAgra in a nearby town, that she had applied to do some student teaching in her home parish of Franklin Parish. In Louisiana, we have parishes instead of counties, as I know you know, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And that she had just posted that picture on Sunday with she and her little girl. Her family and friends that we talked to yesterday and today said she was very affable and always smiling. She just recently, I think, a 2011 graduate of
So this isn't a woman that they're saying had mental issues or anything like that. It sounds like this was a little out of the blue based on what family and friends are saying?
Yes.
Okay.
There was nothing that I could point to. Clearly, if the police conclusions are right, then the young lady has, had some kind of major issues.
I love my champagne. I'm floating.
My God, who could have done this?
I don't know who committed this hateful, vile act, but please fill my comments with words of support and sympathy, and give generously to my PayPal and Patreon, because entirely unverifiable hate incidents like this one are on the rise. Specifically, anonymous handwritten letters and posters that can never ever be tracked and conveniently don't actually damage anyone's property, but are for sure planted by hateful ninjas who are never ever caught. We must resist. Whenever we hear about the rise in hate crimes over the last year, a lot of what we're talking about is this sort of nonsense. Much of this trend is actually self-written and planted hate mail, which serves all of your virtue signaling and protest sparking needs without any of the trouble of doing any actual harm. In many of the cases of alleged vandalism, of actual property damage, there's a serendipitous opportunity to build a monument to love over the graffiti and tell the local news just how virtuous you are in the process.
And when we came out, we saw a swastika on my garage door.
And it was Caitlin's 3 children that came up with the idea to cover this message of hate with a symbol of love.
We actually plan on painting on our garage door and leaving it up there as a reminder that we do love.
And apparently all that love scared away those vandals for good, because they were never found. Darn it. And make no mistake, this recreational victimhood happens across the political spectrum. A major case of hoax hate was revealed this week as the guy who says he was stabbed over his neo-Nazi looking haircut, according to police, made up the whole story. That guy's mistake was hoaxing a serious crime. The real pros at this game create much more subtle offenses like letter writing, both because they're harder to track and because they won't be a priority for police like a violent crime would. And that's what I suspect happened this week at a black church outside of DC. To be clear, I suspect this is hoax hate. I can't prove that it is, but if I trust my instincts, I think that unverifiability is by design, as is often the case with these claims. Members of the Greater Praise Temple Ministries in Dumfries, Virginia opened up for services last Sunday and were shocked to find messages of hate taped on the front door. 2 pieces of loose notebook paper with handwritten and newspaper clipped references to the KKK, the Confederate flag, and a forthcoming Fourth Reich with a warning that the day of the rope is coming. It looks more like the refrigerator artwork from the developmentally challenged children of the forthcoming Reich. The handwriting is messy and the whole thing is bizarrely phrased. Now that's white power, as one tweeter sent me. Sounds like the name of a compilation CD featuring Johnny Rebel and friends. But even beyond the silly surface presentation, there are several aspects of this story that make no sense. Massive red flags that should make one skeptical, or at least they make me skeptical. And weirdly, these are points that the local news makes for sympathy, not skepticism. First, let's look at the holes in the story and then how local news covered it. First, why is it that actual Nazis can never get the swastika right? These swastikas are backwards, and they're not at the right angle. I'm supposed to believe that serious advocates of a Fourth Reich can't remember the symbol of the third? Second, the images here are clipped from a newspaper. The KKK hood, the KKK text, the Confederate flag, which is weird because presumably these clippings aren't from some pro-KKK source. And in the case of the hood, we know exactly where that comes from. That image was recently the cover of Der Spiegel, a German magazine ripping Trump for his response to Charlottesville. The caption reads, "The true face of Donald Trump." Why would a pro-KKK and presumably pro-Trump hate group take anti-KKK, anti-Trump media and repurpose it as a hate message? Why would they clip out the Confederate flag with a news caption still under it, labeling it as the Confederate flag, just in case you aren't sure exactly what flag that is? Third, if people were actually planning to attack the church, why would they give the church a warning about the attack, thus enabling the church to prepare by increasing security? And fourth, funny, the church is using this story as an opportunity to fundraise for exactly that purpose. Now parishioners at the church are attempting to raise the funds to install surveillance cameras on the site in response to the hate messages. That doesn't mean that it's automatically fake or that it's irrational for the church to try to increase security in response to a threat. I just find the convenience to be a bit suspicious. All of these factors combine to raise my eyebrow significantly. There's no proof positively or negatively, at least at present. But this is a story that just doesn't pass the eye test for me. What's strange is all of the factors I identified, the local news also identifies, but never actually acknowledges that these oddities are in fact odd.
Parishioners found these racist flyers on the front door of their church in Dumfries, Virginia yesterday. News 4's Pat Collins is there as police try to figure out who posted them. Pat?
During the vile words posted on the front door of this little church, those words have been taken down. But it can't erase what happened here.
Can't erase what happened here. Taking the paper off of the window literally erased what happened there with no damage. That's part of what makes this story so fishy. If someone hates this black church so much, why not do some real damage?
2 posters taped to the front door of the Greater Praise Temple Ministries, discovered Sunday just before the service here. Poster 1. It says, "Now that's white power." And beneath those words, a picture that appears to be lifted from Der Spiegel, a German satire magazine, suggesting Donald Trump is linked to the KKK. And beneath that picture, the words, "The day of the rope is coming." N-word.
Did the news station even listen back to this report? Did they hear how it sounds so bizarre to the ear? How it doesn't sound like anybody talks? How it sounds like a painfully forced caricature rather than a real threat?
Poster 2. The words, "The Fourth Right," surrounded by backwards swastikas.
Yeah. Backwards swastikas. This report correctly identifies a curious aspect of the case, but doesn't discuss the curiosity. If the fact that the swastikas are backwards is important enough to include in your story, we might spend a moment explaining what that fact might mean. And it seems to me that's one of 2 things. Either this is a person who is trying to make a threat, but is incompetent and unfamiliar with his own ideology, which should lead us to question how seriously to take the threat, or these swastikas were drawn incorrectly because the thirst for immediate victimhood was prioritized over accuracy and credibility. Grammar Nazis, feminazis, actual Nazis. These people are Nazis because of their attention to detail and order. Real Nazis don't cut corners on their swastikas.
Eric Thompson is the minister of music at the church. He says when people learned of these angry words of hate, it actually brought a lot of love to the church.
I think that it done a lot of people may think that it was bad, but one thing when we put it out there that a lot of churches and a lot of other people came together and for the good, because there's good and evil, and most people are for the good.
So can words of hate result in acts of friendship, peace, and love? That's what they're praying for here.
That's what they're hoping for. All benefit and funny. That's exactly what's happened. Oh, isn't it surprisingly fortunate that the crime did no actual damage and that nobody saw who did it, and that as a result we've had an outpouring of love and financial support? Isn't it surprisingly great that there's no cost to us? Only benefit? Forgive me if I find that suspicious. I wish this news team would too, and ask at least one critical question, rather than just accepting this whole story at face value, even when it's contrary to common sense. And look, if footage emerges, or if the cops find the fingerprints of Hitler's ghost on these hasty flyers, I will happily eat my words.
Go.
Jesus fucking Christ, look at this.